Hi 8th grade, welcome to my final Prezi presentation, The Science of Genetics. Let's get started. Our objectives for today's lesson will be differentiating between genetics and heredity and defining and explaining the 3 laws of genetics. So first off, we have to make sure that you understand the difference between heredity and genetics. Heredity is the passing of traits from parents to offspring. The study of heredity developed into a science called genetics. And genetics is important because it allows people to understand how traits are passed from one generation to the next. It also allows people to understand how traits can change over a period of time. And in recent years, treatments and cures for diseases can be developed through different genetic studies. So genetics has really allowed us to have a better understanding of how traits are inherited. And I mentioned in another video about a man named Gregor Mendel, and he was actually the first researcher to use numbers to describe the results of genetics experiments. And he presented his work in the 1860s, but its importance wasn't recognized for many years. So he gave the work, but yet no one really understood what he was talking about till much later. He didn't know about chromosomes or genes, but he was able to develop principles of genetics by experimenting with thousands of pea plants. He spent a lot of time in his garden examining pea plants and figuring out, why do certain plants have this color flowers? Why do certain plants have this kind of leaves? And all that time paid off because he was really able to figure out how different organisms' traits are crossed. So this gentleman in the following YouTube video really goes into detail about Gregor Mendel and his study of genetics in pea plants. It's a short 10-minute video. The link is listed below this video, so I'd like you to take some time, watch the video. He's very entertaining. And then there's some questions on your corresponding worksheet relating to the video. So you want to make sure you watch the video in its entirety and then fill out those different questions on the worksheet. So when you're done watching the video, then you can resume this video and keep watching. Alright, so from parents to offspring, laws of genetics. So there are 3 laws of genetics that we're going to look at today. The first law is the law of dominance. And that means only one form, usually the dominant form of a trait shows, even when both alleles are present. So in this example, when you have an uppercase P and a lowercase p, the plant is going to have purple flowers. Because remember we talked about dominant versus recessive traits? So when you have a dominant trait in a gene, the dominant trait is usually going to make its presence known over the recessive. Remember, you have to have 2 recessive alleles to have the recessive trait present. So anytime you see an uppercase letter, that's usually the law of dominance, and you know that dominant gene is making itself known. The next law is the law of segregation, and that means that each parent passes only one of the alleles for a trait to each offspring. So you remember how the alleles are separated in a Punnett square. You have the 4 squares within the one Punnett square, and each parent gives one of their alleles, and that's what they're talking about, law of segregation. So as you know, those heterozygous genotypes, you know, the parents are passing one dominant and one recessive trait, which is why, as you saw in the real life example, that sometimes half of the genotypes show one phenotype and half of the genotypes show another phenotype. So that's where the law of segregation comes into play. And finally, we have the law of independent assortment. And that means that alleles for one trait are inherited independently or separately from alleles from another trait. So your traits for eye color and hair color are inherited independently of the other. So if you have a family and some of the children have red hair and blue eyes, and other children have blonde hair and blue eyes, it tells you that the alleles for a trait are inherited completely separated. So, and finally, we're going to take a look at a website, and this is an interactive website having to do with Gregor Mendel. And there's different activities there relating to Mendel and genetics. So again, I have the link available underneath this video, and you can click on the link and follow it to the website. The website should look something like this. This is the main interactive activity I want you to take a look at. And you're just going to click these arrows, and it's going to take you through the interactive activity. There are some questions that you have to answer about this particular activity. When you are finished viewing the activity and you've answered the question, then if you scroll down on the page, you can see that there are some other different interactive activities. I've asked you to take a look at 2 of them, and then simply write down the title of that particular interactive activity that you did. And then in class, we can discuss what those different activities were that you took a look at. So, as always, please contact me if you have any questions or concerns, and I look forward to working with you tomorrow in class. Thanks.